Today, we're going to talk about population and migration. We're going to focus on migration and really focus on push-pull factors that reasons that people migrate. So there's two migrate when you migrate someplace, that's permanent or semi-permanent relocation of people from one place to another. You can be an immigrant, which is a migrant. It's a net out migration, meaning an immigrant is someone who leaves the country. They're going out of the country, okay? Versus an immigrant, which is someone who is going to a country. Now, when you have net out migration, that's when you have more immigrants than immigrants. So more people are leaving your country than coming to your country, versus if you have net in migration, and that's when more people are coming to your country than leaving your country. Okay, so the words are really similar. So just keep in mind the difference. One is leaving and one is coming, and there is a difference between the two. So places where people are leaving, greatest immigrants are in red. So where people are going to. So you can kind of see the flow of people and where they're coming from and where they're going to, versus blue, where people are leaving. Okay, so let's start by looking at Asia particularly. There's a lot of people who are leaving, especially South Asia, and coming to the United States. There's a pretty large flow of immigrants actually from Southeast Asia coming into Australia. People leaving, I think this is interesting too, people leaving South America to go to Asia. So kind of you can see where the arrows are that show where people are going to. As we look at Africa, lots of people going to Australia, and then some people going into the Americas. When you look at North and South America, Mexico to the United States is kind of a big area. Central, and that includes Central America as well. There's a large flow of Central American immigrants coming to the United States right now because of the situations that are happening in some of those countries. So take a look at this map. Think about what kind of map this is. This is world immigrants. So these are outbound places where people are leaving. Okay. And this is a cartogram. So where people leave is larger, so like Mexico is pretty large. Not a lot of people live in the United States or Canada. A lot of people live in the United Kingdom, which I think is interesting. China and India are kind of large, Bangladesh. And this is world immigrants. So this is inbound, where people are going to. So a lot of people are coming to the United States, especially from Latin America. But a lot of people are going to places in Europe, especially when we talk about like the Syrian refugees going into Europe. And then people just kind of moving inside of Asia as well. This is what type of map is this? And this is a map of kind of by county, a breakdown of county. And I also want you to think about what scale this is at. Is this at a national level, a regional level, a local level of a map? But you can kind of see, so it's red is going to be net in migration by county in the United States. And then net out migration, the largest is blue. So where are people leaving and where are they going is the question. So I want to draw your attention to a couple places. Florida, for one, the net in migration here is quite large. And that's where a lot of people from the north and colder regions are moving to Florida, Arizona, okay, parts of Texas where there's warm, there's lower taxes, that draws people to them, especially retired people as well. So let's look at Rockford, okay, in Winnebago County. So look at, here's Rockford right here, this dark blue. So there's actually net out migration in this county. More people are leaving this county than coming into this county. Where are they going? We don't know. So just something to I thought this was a good example. And this is a choropleth map. So let's talk about push-pull factors. So usually migration is voluntary. And voluntary migration is a movement in search of a better life. The decision to move usually consists of two main aspects, and those are push-pull factors. The push factors are, pushing someone someplace. Why are you moving to this place? What's the reason? oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Push factors are the away from someplace. Why are you leaving this region? I'm so sorry. The pull factor is bringing someone in. So that's usually a positive. What's drawing someone to that region? So let's go back and look at this map. What are the push pull factors for Florida? So what would be reasons that people want to move to Florida? The weather is good. It's warm all year. You don't want to be in the snow in the north. Those are pull factors for Florida and Arizona. No property tax or no income. I don't think there's an income tax or a sales tax in some of those places. So like in Illinois, our weather is not great. You can move to Florida and we have fairly high taxes as well, sale and property and income. You can move to Florida where there is no sale tax, there is no income tax, and the weather is much better. That would be a pull factor. And the push factor out of Illinois would be the weather is bad and the high taxes. So those are examples of push and pull factors. So remember, the push factor is pushing you away, usually a negative reason. The pull factor is pulling you to someplace, usually a positive. So let's look at some of the different push-pull factors. The first is economic push-pull factors. And this is the most common reason people migrate, is because lack of jobs and economic opportunities. So here's some examples of some historical economic push factors. So the first one is going to be factory workers in the U.S., Rust Belt, beginning in the 1970s. So the push factor is unemployment rose among factory workers, particularly in traditional manufacturing states such as Michigan and Pennsylvania. And the pull factors, many factory workers moved to southern states such as Kentucky and Tennessee as manufacturing opened new factories there. And the reason these companies, move to states like Kentucky, Tennessee, places in the South, they're union busting states. You do not have to pay your workers as much when you're in these sort of right to work states. So, that's a draw for these companies. And so they left the Rust Belt area, which would be places like Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, even Illinois to an extent, Ohio, and moved them farther south. Farmers in rural China beginning around 1950s. So an increased use of machines and the consolidation of small farms reduced the number of farmers. You just don't need people to be farming. And so because of that, farmers moved to China's large cities to look for a different job. So the population of some of these cities in China went from 64 million in 1950 to 636 million by 2010. So we're seeing a significant shift from rural to urban, especially in places like China. Those are economic reasons. So social push-pull factors, people often migrate when they experience discrimination and persecution because of their ethnicity, race, gender, or religion. So examples, the first one is the Mormon migration. I'm actually listening to a podcast about the Mormon migration right now, which was from 1845 to 1857. This happened in the United States. Anti-Mormon violence in Illinois and Missouri results in dozens of deaths, including their leader, Joseph Smith. So approximately 70,000 people migrated to the Great Salt Lake City because this was isolated. There was a lot of opportunities there. It was not a state at this time. 3 years later, it does become a state, and that also poses some problems as well for the Mormons, but they were heavily persecuted for religious reasons. And then Hindus and Muslims during and after the partition of India in 1947 to 1952. Violence resulted in more than 200,000 deaths. So India, I don't know if you know the history of India very well, but India and Pakistan and Bangladesh used to be one country. And so what they decided to do is they divided the countries up between, like, the Hindu majority is India, and the Muslim majority is Pakistan and Bangladesh. That was one country. And then it was divided by India. And so then they separated in I feel like it was 1979. There were thousands of deaths because you were not in your correct area. More than 14 million people migrated in hopes of finding safety in a new country. So some people fled to India, some people fled to Pakistan, some people fled to Bangladesh because both Pakistan and Bangladesh are more Muslim represented countries, and India is Hindu. Political push-pull factors, people who oppose the policies of the government often migrate because they face persecution, arrest, and discrimination. So examples, anti-communist Cubans after Fidel Castro takes over in 1950. Opponents of Castro were jailed or killed. if they spoke out against the government. So many Cubans fled to the United States and received asylum. That would be a political push-pull factor. And then the Dalai Lama and the Tibetan government officials, after China took over Tibet in 1950, the Chinese government is going to persecute and arrest and kill many Tibetans who opposed the takeover. So the Dalai Lama and his supporters fled Tibet in 1959 to India, which allowed them to set up an exile government. And Tibet is still a really kind of disputed area with China, and still Tibetans in that region are still heavily persecuted. And Tibet is kind of the ruler area of China on the far western side of China. So then we have environmental push-pull factors. People often migrate to escape from harm from natural disasters, droughts, and other unfavorable conditions. This is the Nepal earthquake. You can see the destruction that happened with that earthquake. The tsunami in Japan was pretty unbelievable as well. So hundreds of thousands have been forced to move to dry land in Africa because of drought conditions. Basically, the land in the Sahel is being destroyed by desertification, meaning the Sahara Desert is spreading into these regions, and it's becoming more dry and desert-like conditions. And human life is very difficult in a desert situation, especially in the Sahara, where it's really just like sand. There's nothing else. Like if you were to go to the deserts in like Arizona or New Mexico, it's not just sand. There's plant life as well. Not the case in the Sahara. So population increased and low rainfall. There's an overpopulation, and it's really a burden on the land. Flooding along the Mississippi in 2011 changed the farmland. That's what this picture is up here. You can kind of see where the flooding happened in the Mississippi. This is the drylands in Tanzania. People are attempting to obtain water from a dry riverbed, so they're digging for their water, and then flooding as well has been a major problem. And this is flooding in, I believe, in Asia. So environmental push-pull factors, farmers from Colorado, Kansas, and Oklahoma and Texas in the 1930s. A severe drought caused thousands to lose their farms in the Dust Bowl in the 1930s. And farmers moved to California hoping to find work. And that kind of set up California to be a major farming location for farms as well, different kinds of farms. And then residents living near the Fukushima nuclear power plant in Japan in 2011, the earthquake and tsunami damaged the reactors, releasing radioactive material. Residents near the power plant were resettled. Still, no one lives in this part of Japan. There's a really good episode of, what is it called? Dark Tourist on Netflix, where they take tours into the areas around the Fukushima nuclear power plant, and no one lives there. And the radiation is very high. There's a great part of it where they're like, if you're a woman in childbearing age, you should not be in this area because the radiation is so high that it could damage like your eggs. And then if you ever have a child, they could have, disabilities because of that. And like there were some young women on the trip and they're like, we need to get off. So, I mean, it's a pretty amazing episode of Dark Tourist on Netflix. And it's only like a 15-minute clip. We would normally try to watch it, but I just don't have time this year. But if you have Netflix, it's worth a watch. So then demographic push-pull factors. Some countries are unbalanced demographically. Young adults might not find someone to marry. It's a young population. There's a risk of overpopulation in some of those areas. So farmers in Europe, the population of industrial countries increased while land became scarce. European migrants came to the United States in part because of the Homestead Act. They were given free land, basically. That's a demographic reason. Young educated people in less developed countries, Latin America, North Africa, Middle East, and Asia. Many people in less developed countries live in areas where population is growing very quickly and they can't find employment. So developed countries in Northern Africa and Europe with aging population need these workers to come in and work very specific jobs. They attract a lot of immigrants to their country. So intervening obstacles. So there are barriers that make reaching their desired destination more difficult. And the first is economic. A migrant might lack enough money to reach a specific destination. There are social problems as well. A migrant gets married to someone who lives in a country along the way, so they stay in that person's community. Political, a migrant can't get a visa to enter a country. And then environmental, they can't cross a sea, desert, or mountain range. So there are obstacles to migrating, kind of depending on where you live and what happens to you. Okay, that is all for today. So tomorrow we're going to talk a little bit more about migration.